Breaking just moments ago, a judge has ruled in the Apple Epic lawsuit over anti-competitive practices in the App Store. In a sweeping ruling against the iPhone maker, Apple has been ordered by a court to change the way it operates its lucrative App Store. Katie, what's the stock doing? How's it reacting?
Well, this order definitely took traders by surprise, and you can see out of those headlines, the stock dropping swiftly. It's now down over 3%, and Tim, that's actually its biggest drop since May. But just for some context, we're talking about the world's most valuable company here. And Tim, right before the show started, you mentioned it's only at the lowest since August 27th. So, this stock is still doing well, but even still, it's whittling its year-to-date gains down to about 13% or so. And again, for context, the S&P 500 is about 20% higher on the year. So Apple is underperforming. But on the other side of this order, I do want to highlight shares of companies such as Roblox, Match, and Spotify. So these are companies that list their apps on the App Store. Now they will theoretically be able to link to external websites for payment, meaning that Apple wouldn't take a cut. And as you can see, that is lifting shares of these companies this morning.
Yeah, Netflix also higher by about 1% as well. On the phone to discuss is Bloomberg News' Mark Gurman. Also, Bloomberg Intelligence is Anand Srinivasan. Guys, thanks for joining us on this breaking news. Mark, how big of a blow is this to Apple?
I think this is a significant blow. Anand can take over from here. I'm just getting word from Apple. I need to.
Yep, go ahead.
Sure
you jump off, go ahead. You check it out and we'll come back to you. Anand, how big of a blow is this to Apple?
I think it's a fractional loss, to be quite honest, not a complete cut. Remember that, we see about $22 billion or so in sales in fiscal 22 from this business. Now, how much of this moves away from Apple is the key question. The mixed ruling does favor Apple in the big ticket parts of the case, such as, the closed distribution system is okay, the commission rates are okay. So the stuff that does stay in the system will still be subject to whatever Apple decides to impose. But at the same time, what moves away from Apple will not be likely paying those fees. There's going to be cross appeals. There's going to be a potential. Apple's going to seek an injunction or stay on the injunction. So we see this as a sort of dragged out situation. We see this as a fractional loss more than a complete hit.
And so let's talk about what this means for the tech sector at large. Those other tech giants out there, I'm thinking of Microsoft and Amazon. Does this ruling open the floodgates in any sense? Should we expect to see more antitrust actions brought against some of those other tech giants?
Yeah, I would. Look, this does certainly set a precedent, right? So we would imagine that this sort of carries through into Google as well as other app stores in the space. So and the model itself will come into question. But the walled garden, the fact that you effectively pay to list your apps in that space and you give commissions, that is not necessarily under threat. The question then becomes is how much will users within those ecosystems choose to pay outside versus inside? Remember, their fees may not be that drastically different depending on how much price reductions there are from either vendor.
So Anand, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm still reading through this, and I'm just wondering if this could be an opportunity for every single app that does have in-app purchases or perhaps allows you to subscribe, like Spotify or Netflix or Audible.com, the Amazon-owned audiobook company. Are they all just going to say, okay, well, we are now going to direct our users outside of the App Store because we get to keep 100% of that cut?
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be that push. There's also a convenience factor for iOS users because it's so tightly intertwined. So the question then becomes is, for every 100 users or for every $100 of payment that comes in through Apple, how much of that shifts very quickly outside the Apple ecosystem, right? If you assume that it's 100% overnight, then that $22 billion goes away. If you think it's partial, then it takes a little bit more time and it's not a full amount. So that's the key question.
Well, could an app developer, could a company perhaps say you get a discount if you pay for this outside of Apple's ecosystem because we don't have to take that cut?
Yeah, that certainly will be a lucrative opportunity that the app developers will certainly use to peddle their product, peddle their payment systems. But you have to think about payment systems. You have to think about the widespread availability of that payment system, et cetera. And the Apple has already sort of set up all of that. So the question is, are you willing to, or do you want to set up all of those ecosystems for that? And each developer has to make that decision.
And so something I'm curious about is that we know that Apple is expected to appeal, but is that expected to be successful? Does that have any shot, or is the writing on the wall at this point?
It's a question of magnitude, right? So if you look at the big apps, I would imagine that they certainly peddle alternative payment systems, right? So the take rates for Apple and Google are likely to come down as a result of this. That's for sure, and particularly as it biases towards the larger applications, whether it's games, whether it's content, etc. Both for in-app content as well as for the purchase of the app itself, right? So that's one part of it. But if you have small apps that are one-time purchases that are very, very small in terms of transactions, one may not make that decision. Or if it's part of a larger subscription offering, et cetera, and it's bundled through it. So those are independent decisions or individual decisions that app developers have to make. Worst case scenario, $22 billion. We just don't think it's likely in the near term.
Hey, Anand, what is it that retail investors, people who hold Apple shares right now, what do they need to be on the lookout for, at least to get clarity from Apple about to what extent this will affect the company's bottom line?
So remember that one of the things that came as part of this ruling was that the fact that they have a walled garden and the fact that they are charging apps some listing fee, if you may, and taking a cut out of that commission, that model was upheld, right? So that's a key element that is in Apple's favor that one shouldn't sort of discount. There's going to be some volatility in the stock for sure as we go through this, parsing this ruling, the potential injunctive relief that Apple seeks, as well as the 90 days that it has. What are the actions by Apple and the app developers as a result of this? All of that has to be taken into question. So as a result, in the near term, I think higher volatility is to be expected.
Anand Srinivasan from Bloomberg Intelligence. Anand, thank you so much for taking the time. Help us sift through this breaking news. Really appreciate it.